Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, everybody, welcome tonight to the first of several meetings. The first one will be the Community Development Meeting for Monday, November 13th, 2023. We have 3 items on the agenda, and the first is the approval of the Community Development Meeting Minutes from September 25th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. Schneider. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 2 is the matter of a rezoning request of property located at 1267 Lowell Street. This was passed at Planning Commission on November 7th, 2023. And I'm not sure who will be speaking first, whether it'll be Daryl or somebody representing Liberty Development. But whoever, they could just...
Mr. Farkas.
Daryl Farkas.
Mr. Stewart is here. He just walked in.
Okay. You're in the batter's box. Mr. Stewart, just please state your name and address of the company for the record.
Ty Stewart, Liberty Development Company, 28045 Rainy Parkway, Suite E, Westlake.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
So we are requesting a lot split at 1267 Lowell Street, split in a consolidation. And the idea here is that we want to donate that land, put a conservancy easement on that land, and donate it to a third party, conservancy agency. As a function of the lot splits, to get all the access and to meet with the, I apologize, I'm a little out of breath, to comply with all of the city's ordinances, it requires a rezoning as well of a couple of the parcels. Yeah, it might be easier, can I?
Mm-hmm.
So this drawing is kind of a high-level overview trying to accomplish here. So,
You have to talk in here, though.
oh, I'm sorry. So the shaded areas in the blue are parcels that would be split and part of a larger consolidation. The parcels in the orange color would not be part of the easement that we would be putting on the property. So there's an existing building right now along Lowell Street that would be within the footprint of that orange shaded area. That would become one parcel zoned H1 because the existing building is H1. And then the property to the north in the blue is currently zoned light industrial. To make it consistent with the properties, the two parcels to the west of that, we would rezone that to residential medium density. And again, the whole exercise here is to donate the property and put a conservation easement on it. we have any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions from anyone on the panel? Mr. Schneider?
Looking at this diagram, is the blue section landlocked? Is there access into the blue section from any other, or is it,
There would be through a consolidation.
okay,
So what's in the blue would be consolidated into the two parcels to the west of it, and that has access out to the north.
got it, thank you.
Are there any, Mrs. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I think it's important to note, and perhaps Mr. Farkas was going to mention this, that with the land donation, unfortunately not to the city of Elyria, but with the land donation, it will not be able to be built upon. And
That's correct.
I saw Ms. Deary's.
Yeah, that's correct. It would have a conservation easement on it held by a third party. We're currently working with Lorraine County Metro Parks on this. And I think, Mrs. Mitchell, you've spoken with them, and I know, the mayor has spoken with them as well. It would be donated to Lorraine County Metro Parks with a conservation easement that precluded any kind of, construction other than some walking trails and stuff like that.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say I support this because it will be a good thing. The Metro Parks, maybe they'll build a trail, they'll hook into the West Park Trail. It will be a good thing, so I do support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like, ask Mr. Farkas to weigh in on the topic, please.
Mr. Chair, through you, this is by far one of the more complicated lot splits, rezonings, and consolidations that have come across my path in quite a while. I felt it best to take it and go to the monitor and indicate for your use via color codes from if you look at your monitor, this parcel right here, when I scanned it, that is a red delineation of the map. And it goes down and goes over, and it ties into, right now, Lowell Street. All this is one piece of property. The proposed split is to take this chunk right here and absorb it into the main property. Unfortunately, this piece they want to absorb is currently zoned light industrial. Now, the parcel with the building on it is heavy industrial. So that triggers a rezone, which is part of the split. Due to the split, it now isolates this parcel, this one and this one, creating a landlocked situation. As the applicant indicated, that is resolved by the consolidation of the other parcels to the west that also abut 113. So the first concern is this parcel and this parcel, which are both light industrial, which by color delineation, the green is proposed what they want to do. They want to now take all this land in green and make it one big chunk. As you can see from this parcel right here, where my cursor is at, if I can get into it, the purple delineation is actually part of this building property. They want to chop some of that off and split it via a land hook, tying it into the property to the north. Can get the computer to work. You zoom out. Which via the verbal description now becomes part of this parcel and also changes this current zoning district from heavy industrial to light industrial. Now the intent is, as I'm getting there, you see this little Z right here I'm showing? That's a land hook. That's a proposal for combining the lots to the west. Now as I scroll down, these are the lots to the west. Pretty large tracts of land. It's so large it won't fit on this page. But this particular parcel is zoned residential multi-household low density, which is a residential district, as well as this parcel here. The intent is to combine this one with this one, and all these, in essence, rezoning all of these to a residential multi-household low density, creating a buffer between the heavy industrial district and the current existing residential apartments and homes on Oakwood Drive. I was only in favor of this request contingent that conservation easement is enacted, because other than that, we now have a conflict of zoning. We have a heavy industrial district right up against a residential. The saving grace is, you can't build on it. If that is truly factual, which I have not seen this information, the Planning Commission legal advisor, Jim Taylor, requested that information. I guess it's forthcoming. But moving to the last page, scroll down. Oop. This is a continuation of the acreage. And this particular paper street, per a check with law department, was in fact vacated. This was a future development proposed many, many years ago that never took place. One of my concerns in regards to this lot split and consolidation was this paper street that has right-of-ways and easements enacted. But since it was confirmed to be vacated, that's no longer on the table. If approved and moved forward, they do have access off of 113 at any point to this entire acreage. Back to the original proposal, let me scroll back up, which leads them back into this acreage, which no longer landlocks the parcels. I purposely didn't do a memo because it would be incredibly convoluted. So I felt it best to do it this way, to kind of walk everyone through the same way that I walk through it when I do a plan review on this. For me, this makes sense, contingent we have that conservation easement.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions, concerns? Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Were we saying that there was some area in there that's wetlands? That was the issue in the beginning, why they really couldn't do very much back in there?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Oswald, from the map provided by the applicant, a good portion of the land that was indicated to the west and this is in the wetlands area.
Mm-hmm.
So on down the road with the Metro Parks and that being a possible wetlands, that could be a mitigation area with land credits?
I'll have to defer to Amanda on that one, the law director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, that's something obviously that would be between the property owner and as they develop it. That's not something that we would be involved in. It's not our property, but you're right. I mean, quite possibly. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I and my colleagues in the law director's office did have a chance to speak with Chief Building Official, Mr. Farkas, this afternoon. It's my understanding that Planning Commission did approve this with conditions. Not had the opportunity to see those in writing as of yet, since I know that was a very recent meeting. However, the conditions were that the conservation easement would need to be put into place to get Planning Commission's full approval. I will tell the committee that it would be my office's recommendation that basically we do have understanding that Metro Parks is involved. I have no reason to doubt that. However, that being said, it would be the recommendation that that we would have some sort of something in writing from Metro Parks, some sort of draft conservation agreement, or excuse me, draft conservation easement, a donation agreement with the Metro Parks that we can review, something that's in place to show that there is a commitment on the part of Metro Parks, and indicating something indicating their willingness to accept the proposed donation. Also, something to show that the Planning Commission conditions have been met. Until and unless that happens, my recommendation would be that this committee not move forward. As you all know from other situations, if there are conditions hanging out there, my recommendation would be that we're not at the point to pass legislation. So, at the point that those conditions are met and we have, satisfactory, verification of that, then obviously we would be able to move forward. But, I think that right now, that this body doesn't have that before it. Thank you.
Thank you, Law Director. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Stewart, I was at that meeting. It was very fun, I'm sure, for you. But there was a lot of conditions on both sides, and I know, are you working through these conditions that it looks like everything should, between you and the law for, Mr. Taylor and stuff, you were able to get everything together?
That's correct. And the city's been very good to work with on this. I would also, it was my understanding or my hope, I guess, that this would be moved forward through the first two readings, but that the third reading would be held in abeyance until that document exists. And that's just to try and expedite the process here a little bit. Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of the Metro Parks on creating that draft document. And I also point out we were here a couple years ago getting that property rezoned to light industrial because we had plans to develop it. If we had plans to do something with it, it wouldn't be residential. We wouldn't be coming back now and asking for that zoning. So it is our full intent to do it. We've had those conversations for well over a year now with them. They just don't work on our timeline. And I would ask that, recognizing that it's a reasonable request to see the piece of paper, I would ask that council try to move forward and get a couple of the readings out of the way, but just hold the third one in abeyance until you get a donation agreement or something that you're satisfied with.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I also was at the Planning Commission meeting, and it was my understanding, and perhaps the mayor or Mr. Farkas could speak more to this, that we would move forward to allow them to get the documentation from the Metro Parks. Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Chairman, you are correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Law Director Derry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I would not be able to approve that legislation as to form. And I apologize, but no one cleared that with my office. And I would have severe reservations about doing that, especially due to the fact that Planning Commission has conditions on there. I would have severe reservations about doing that. Now, obviously, if this committee feels free to move forward, notwithstanding those conditions and doesn't have issues with those conditions, then we would proceed accordingly. But it would be my recommendation that we get something in writing, whether it's something short of the draft conservation agreement, but something in writing that indicates Metro Parks wants to move forward and would accept that donation. I think that would be best, obviously for the city and more of a more immediate concern, those residents in that area.
Thank you, Law Director. Mayor Whitfield.
Through you, Chairman. So I agree with Law Director Derry about having that document on hand. What we tried to propose, just due to the timing, was to have these public hearings prior to the official vote on approving it, and give them the kind of somewhat of a green light as well as time to work out with the Metro Parks this donation agreement. I also want to just remind everyone, the Planning Commission is a recommending body to you all. So if there's certain conditions you all would like to make, you can define those conditions in whatever legislation you pass, if you decide to pass some legislation. But it was our understanding that we would move forward and give them the time to work on that agreement with the Metro Parks. But I agree wholeheartedly with the law directors that, even we didn't feel comfortable approving it without that document in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Schneider.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this may be to Mr. Farkas or Mr. Stewart. The parcel that's to the left along the back of the properties on Oakwood Drive, it's owned by the same owner. It looks like Lowell Street Properties. Is that also going to be donated to? Is that part of it?
Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Schneider, this parcel
Yes,
here,
that one.
that is not for the latest submittal, not part of the combination.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, concerns, comments? Okay, that being said, I'll address the community development, those that sit on the committee. What your thoughts are. I'm going to start out by telling you what my thoughts are. I'm going to side with the law director in regards to this for tonight, in order for us to be cautious until certain things are in our possession where we can be cautious going forward. But if anybody has anything they'd like to say in regards to that, I want to hear it. Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you know, I know Mr. Sue has put a lot of work into this, and I, though, think that we need to listen to what our law director is telling us, and maybe we need a little more information, more documents before we go ahead with something. So I guess I agree with you also.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Mrs. Mitchell?
I concur that we should wait until we have more documentation in hand.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Schneider?
I also concur.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schneider.
I too concur.
Mr. Lippi, okay, thank you. Thank you to the committee, and thank you for everybody on the panel. This was some good discussion. Let's make sure when we proceed with caution, and we'll make sure we get it right the first time. So, thank you very much. It'll be tabled to a date uncertain, and everybody will be advised before that happens. Thank you. Okay, off to the next item on the agenda is the matter of a liquor license transfer from Ohio Mart Group LLC, 515 Abbey Road, to Kirchner 2022 Incorporated, 515 Abbey Road, Elyria Food Mart, the old Circle K. This would be permit Class C1 and C2 beer and wine in sealed containers for carry-out only. The police department and the zoning officials have had no concerns on this property. Could I get a motion?
So moved. Oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, madam.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that the city does not request a hearing.
Okay, motion has been made that the city does not request a hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Mr. Lippian.
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. At this time, I'd ask Mr. Tolet to please call finance.
I'll call finance to order.
Thank you, Mr. Tolet.
Mr. Stewart, who is normally the chairperson, is unavailable this evening and has been excused. So I will be the acting chairperson tonight for finance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tolet. Appreciate that. Okay, the first item of two is the approval of the joint meeting minutes from October 10th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Schneider and seconded by Mrs. Davis.
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 2 on the agenda is the matter of a program extension and budget increase for the Skill City Promise program through the city and Lorain County Community College. Mayor Whitfield and Community Development Director Ashley Scott.
So thank you, through you, Chairman, to the committee and to the residents. So just a quick recap, this Skill City program was something we established back in 2021. And the purpose of the initiative is for Elyria residents to get new skills, and through a partnership with Lorain County Community College. And we've continued with the program for a couple years now. And every year we traditionally approve it halfway through the year. So a part of what we'll be discussing tonight, as you'll hear kind of the overview of the program, is looking at it on an annual basis versus a semester basis. So Director Scott's prepared, and also we have Cindy Kushner here from Lorain County Community College. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Go right ahead.
Through you, so this program was originally approved in 2020. It has received multiple extensions. It is last dollar funding. And as a result of COVID, because so many other funding streams had come in, it took a little bit longer to expend this initial $200,000. That being said, City Council did approve to extend this agreement until December of this year. The money has been expended to date, so we are before you here tonight to request an additional $200,000 for 2024. We do have Cynthia Kushner with the college here to give you a brief PowerPoint presentation on the status of the program.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Excuse me just a moment. Just state your name and address of for the record.
Cynthia Kushner, 3540 Edgewater Drive, Vermillion. Good evening, everyone. As Mayor Whitfield said, the program has been instituted for Illyrians who are pursuing high-demand areas that are highly employable and needed by employers in Northeast Ohio and certainly in Elyria. It is a gap-funded program, so we apply all other funds first that the student might be eligible for. Of course, Ashley mentioned the HERF funding or the CARES funding. The first couple semesters, we had a hard time spending really pretty much anything because we had other dollars. And then we kind of ramped up, and it's a little difficult to predict how much we spend each semester because, again, it just depends on what other grants we have coming in that are going to cover some of those funds first. So we have expended the initial allotment, that initial $200,000. I just want to show a little reminder. These are the kinds of programs this helps fund: heavy in healthcare, heavy in IT, heavy in manufacturing, and also business. And you can see more of those. So we have served about 209 individuals. Average age is 28. Again, we've expended those funds this fall. We had about 6,000, I think, left over at the end of summer. We're in fall semester now, so we're on track to spend, as you see, around $227,000. The average award has been running around between about $1,000 to now about almost $1,100, as you can see there. A little bit, but I can send this over too, so you can look at it in more depth. So we're serving about 55% female, 45% male. You can see the race and ethnicity chart there in the middle, the purple being white Caucasian. We have broken down by different ethnicities and races. And then the average age. So we're serving 19 to 21-year-old is about 25%. Next biggest group is that 25 to 29-year-old group. But you can see how that's broken down. So we have a lot more information. They've taken 562 courses, 211 different courses. So a lot of students we're seeing in finance, computer maintenance, computer information systems, accounting, some of those business related, and then healthcare as well. Some of the students are doing extremely well. About 60 of them have a 4.0 GPA, 87 with a 3.0. Had some graduates now, about 84 graduates and 98 credentials awarded. Some of those credentials are listed there: medical coding, the associate degree of nursing, some real estate, computer diagnostics, CompTIA, that A+ certification, which is very high demand, software development, and you can see some of those listed there. That small bar to the left, the reason 23, 24 is so low, we're just in fall semester now. So we had a few summer grads, as you see there, about 10. But this fall, we'll have some more, and then, of course, at the end in May is when we see our big jump. And these are just more of the one, individuals, so the smaller groups there: clinical lab science, cyber. Those are some of the other fields that they're studying. So that's a little update where we're at. Again, funds are expended. We really believe that while we've served 209, it's inspired many more than that, because again, as they come in, if they're eligible for financial aid or they're eligible for a scholarship through high school, those funds go first, and then the GAP funds. But 209 have been funded. I want to express our gratitude for your confidence in us, in serving the Illyrians. Also for, again, getting behind it and creating that greater awareness within the community, being that nudge. That's so important. It's something that I feel we just need to continue to do in order to get people inspired to take that step. Once we get them there, we work really hard to provide those wraparound services and the supports needed to get people to the finish line. The other thing these fast track programs, the shorter term ones that I showed earlier do, is they help feed those earn and learn programs, like you've heard me talk about MEMS. We have a wonderful partnership with UH, where they're taking the STNAs, bringing in LCCC STNA students, and then paying for them to get their LPN license while they work part-time and go to school part-time, getting paid full-time wages. So that was a huge breakthrough. And again, all of this helps feed towards programs like that. The other being the Earn and Learn with MEMS, where automation and robotics is another one. Again, we get them that first credential, that first 9 to 12 credits, and then they get out to work right away and then continue their studies while they're working. So I guess I open it up to questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mayor Whitfield.
Yeah, just gonna, just to put a capstone on this is, this initiative, and thank you to the community college for being willing to partner on this. It's about eliminating barriers. Some may call them excuses, but eliminating barriers, and it's also providing hope and inspiration. So when you think about an Elyria resident, we have the ability right now to say, hey, there's opportunities out there. If you're willing to put in the work, we're willing to support you on your journey to get the skills so that you can get that well-paying job. It's also been a great incentive as we've engaged with our businesses. When we talk to them about doing business here in the city of Elyria, we've talked about, hey, we got this Skill City initiative. If you come here to the city of Elyria, there's this opportunity to train folks here to fit with your in-demand occupation. And so I think, the fact that they've been able to stretch this small amount of money out over this time because they have so many other resources available, I think speaks to it's not just about dollars. It's also about the inspiration of people getting involved in the college, because the college has a host of resources that people just aren't aware of. So by having this initiative, it's inspiring people to take advantage of those resources as well. So, and other cities are starting to model what we're doing here in their city now as well. So thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I might want to add that this program is just absolutely fantastic. This is state of the art. We were on the the first ones to partner with LCC, and it's been a great partnership, and we'll continue that partnership. And as you said earlier, it is very important. Education is important, business is important. Getting those individuals prepared to go out into the workforce and work for these local companies, it's just absolutely fantastic. And thank you for providing that. Thank you very much. I saw Mr. Tolet. Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have a question first and a comment. Question is this administered through your financial aid department? And why I ask that is if John or Mary Smith has a Pell Grant and the Rotary Scholarship, are those taken first? And then, did I understand that correct? Could you talk about that for a second?
Yes, we do require the FAFSA be filled out first so that all other aid is applied first. Some of the very short programs, the program's not eligible for financial aid, but the student might be. So yes, they're required to file the FAFSA first, and then Rotary Scholarship.
Or that was just a hypothetical.
Foundation scholarships through LCC, all of that's applied first, and then this fills the gap. So if there's like a $200 left over, this fills the gap in tuition.
Thank you very much. And then my comment is, if you looked at those numbers that were put up, almost 50% of the participants got a 3.0 or better. And looking at those numbers, and just quick head math, if 80 of the students a year generate $3,000 a year in city tax, it pays for itself. It's free then to us. And if you look at it, I mean, that's kind of I don't know if that's a good way to look at it or not, but it's a realistic way to look at it. How many are staying in our city and using this degree and generating income for the city? So kudos to you, Mayor, on this program.
Thank you, Mr. Slett. Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a comment that I talked to a young lady that was in an LPN program, and so I know we need to do a better job in encouraging people to go to the college. For we have a phenomenal college here and close to home, but I encourage her to drop that and go into RN. And immediately she understood because it was available to her. So I just want us as the public to continue to encourage the citizens of Elyria to go out to the college and use our college because it's there. And thank you so much for all that you do for us, for the college. And we appreciate the city of Elyria bringing forth this initiative.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Next, Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair and co-chair, or stand-in chair. A couple questions. Okay, one's going to be, you've heard it from me every time you come up and spoke. And the other one is, are we not doing good enough job that we only have we got like a 65% range that is white that's taking advantage of this? Are we not doing our job with everybody? That's my first question. And you can answer my second question, that anybody out here that's had any remodeling or home building done and they have a hard time getting a construction worker to come out and whatever, we have a need. You say these are programs for what we have needs for. Mm-hmm. Do we not have that need in the construction trades? Okay, have at it. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So you're right, it did uptick some, a little bit more Caucasian. We need to do more. I agree, we need to do more. I know we're trying, but it really does take us all to be that encouragement and that, you know, that nudge, and then getting people connected to the wraparound supports that they need. We know transportation continues to be a huge challenge. You know, that's the other one out there. We have been able to at least supply technology to those who have struggles with transportation. You know, I'm open to your ideas too. What more can we do? I know we have someone who's almost full-time working on this and trying to connect to parents, trying to get even to, you know, the football, you know, the younger kids' football games and things like that, trying to make those connections. But we know we need to keep coming back at people because, you know, they need to be pushed, not just once or twice, sometimes 6, 7 times, you know, and beyond. So I feel like we're still getting started with it, even though we've been at it for a while. So we just need, I think, to continue. I know construction trades. We do have our construction program, and I know we have the masonry program, but you do need to be in the union to be a part of that masonry program that we have, where we do deliver a full associate degree in masonry technology. I agree, there is more need, more demand. Right now, our program is at Lorraine County JVS, so that could be a challenge too for students because, you know, that's a little bit of a drive. So that's something we need to work on. I agree. I'll take it back again to our dean. I know it's something they're looking at.
And I'm through you. You guys have done a great job. So I'm just we can always do better in, you know, those things with who's applying. Yes, we need to do a better job to get more of everybody. And as, you know, the construction, we've been doing this for 20-some years now. We keep saying it's going to get bad, it's going to get bad. Well, it's bad.
It is bad.
So, yeah, anything we can do to help out. And I know the JVS is working, but maybe in partnership. But, you know, you had a slow start because of COVID. And yeah, if we could start getting it going where people start taking advantage, then like Phil said, you know, we get a payback for the people that we spend and we invest in. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will read the committee report. I'm sorry, Law Director Deary.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Question either for Director Scott or the mayor. This initially was funded through issue 6. Is that the proposal again? And I noted, would this be an emergency? This will be part of the 2024 budget. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, you are correct, Director Deary.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will read the committee report. We have considered the matter of a budget increase and program extension for the Skill City Program Agreement for 2024. This is an ordinance authorizing the said program extension and budget increase of $200,000 for 2024. Can I get a motion from Community Development?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Oswald, seconded by Mrs. Mitchell.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
For finance, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, seeing no further business for Community Development, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn Community Development.
So
Moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
We're going to take about a 5-minute recess, then we'll start finance.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you said you were leaving. Oh.
I did see that.
Okay, if we could take our seats, please. We'll get the finance meeting kicked off. That includes you, Mrs. Davis. Okay, I will call finance to order. I'm going to start off with a couple housekeeping things. We have a group regarding Chestnut Ridge here tonight. I'm going to move that to the top of the list, to number, yes, from, yes, currently number 12. I'm going to move that up to number 2. And then item number 6 tonight, the agreement with Macaulay and Company. We are going to table that item as requested by Safety Service Director Lundy. And number 11, we are going to move, it's in our ordinance, and that will be, we'll bring that up at the November 27th meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. That way we'll be following ordinance. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Let's start off then with the first item on the agenda, approval of the finance minutes from October 10th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and properly seconded. Question's been called. All in favor, use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item number 12 that has been moved to number 2. And this is the matter of the purchase of the property located at 39009 Chestnut Road. This was referred by Councilmember Corbin, and this is for discussion only tonight. Councilman Corbin, if you would go ahead and address council.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the purpose of my bringing this, I have received probably 25 telephone calls and emails since this accident happened a couple of weeks ago. The residents, Pat and Dennis Campanelli, I've known them for the 7 years that I have been around this neck of the woods. To my knowledge, no other house in the city of Elyria has been hit 4 times. This is the 4th time that Pat and Dennis have had to put up with an accident in their living room. There have been multiple deaths associated with accidents at this location, and I was very pleased to hear Chief Pelko say at the safety meeting that there were 3 deaths on the 31st of December 2017. My sole objective in bringing this issue up is to make the Campanellis whole. I have received a slew of suggestions. Reduce the speed limit on Abbey. Blockade Abbey at Chestnut. Don't let anybody get out. Move the house. I know that the Campanellis have moved out of their house. They have lived here for 40 years. When they bought and built, the only thing around them and behind them was farmland. The whole purpose of this tonight, of this discussion tonight, is how can we how can the city of Elyria make this couple whole? I would like to see the house bought by the city, the land donated to the city, and we repurpose the land to some other use. And there have been a number of suggestions that I have received about a park, just making it an empty lot for kids to play in. The crimes that have been committed at night. They are not during daylight hours. So I open this up for discussion to the other council members. My sole purpose is to make the Campanellis whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Any other members of council have any comments that they would like to make? I will speak to this, then I will ask our engineer to step up, and if you can talk about, as I stated to the Campanellis, a concern that I have about the purchase of the home is, and it's a concern because we have to live with our decision for not just this year, but for years to come. If we set precedent on purchasing homes and or businesses that are struck by vehicles, how do we as a city live with that or not live with that for the next 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years? Mr. Lippian had a business destroyed in his neighborhood that he stepped forward on to assist and help and work with insurance on. So whatever we collectively decide, now, again, in my opinion, we have to do something to help these people as a council. We have to do something. I don't know what that is right now, but we have to look forward, whatever we do, that we can do it next year and the year after that and 20 years down the road. So I would ask our engineer speak on this, please.
Good evening, through you, Chair. This situation is definitely one that no one wants to have to deal with. Our office in the past has looked at what can be done, what can be changed, what can we do within the right-of-way to help alleviate the issues. The city has done certain things. We have put the guardrail in, put some arborvitae to try to screen the signage that's on Chestnut Ridge there at the end of Abbey. But let's face it, you know, when you have a driver that's either impaired or just darn right crazy, you know, arborvitaes aren't going to do much. What we've looked at possibly doing, and this was suggested a few years ago, is to extend the guardrail beyond the original driveway on Chestnut Ridge and provide an additional opening for access to that property on the west side. There's already access, a small driveway on the east side of the intersection. This would provide a U-shape driveway, so potentially access would be a hair easier when we eliminate the big original driveway that's at the intersection itself. One of the issues that we run into is that because this property is at the T intersection and we have traffic stopping for a traffic signal, we may end up having to look at, you know, do we need to move stop bars in order to make sure that there's an opening at all times for a vehicle to access the property. But that's, you know, down farther. Right now, we're just kicking around ideas and seeing what can be done. Again, we proposed this option with a single driveway previously, and the Campanellis had decided that, you know, that driveway isn't going to work well. So this time around, we're looking at possibly doing the second driveway opening. Maybe that makes it a little bit palatable to change for their property. With the additional greenery, trees or arborvitaes and guardrail and all the concrete work that would go in, we'd probably be looking around roughly, this is just a very rough estimate, $40,000 to $45,000. You know, and Councilman Corbin mentioned other ideas. We've looked, you know, we've kicked around the idea, you know, can the house be moved? We looked at, you know, can it be moved back farther on the property? And there really isn't much space there to move it back. Plus, you know, and we've even said, I heard it this evening, that the question came up, well, if the house isn't there, then, you know, where does this car stop if they actually do run through the intersection onto that property? Just so you're aware, guardrail across that property, and if we even extend it across the existing driveway, guardrail's not meant to stop a head-on collision. A vehicle will still go through guardrail, which will slow it down, hopefully, if the vehicle's not going too fast. But it's not a solution that will prevent potential property damage.
My question is this then, legally, could we reinforce, could the city reinforce that guardrail so that it becomes a stopping barrier? I wanted to say it out loud, just so everyone knows that we can't legally put up a 1-inch steel sheet so that nothing could get through it.
That is correct. We would not want to put something in our right-of-way that could potentially cause injury or, God forbid, death when someone were to hit that, when it's not a situation that calls for it. And in this case, it doesn't. I mean, the intersection is what it is, and if we were to put, whether it's a reinforced guardrail, concrete barricades, that type of thing, if any injury caused by that would be something that the city would need to be.
The city would be liable on? Okay. I would ask you to continue to dig into this for solutions to help us, because we're not engineering experts. I would ask the law director to continue to, again, we don't want to set precedent that we can't live with for everybody. That's not fair and equitable to everyone for long term. So I would ask you, would the Campanellis like to speak tonight also? Would you do that, please?
My name is Michael Whitlock, 5598 Wallace Boulevard, North Ridgeville, Ohio. I am the spokesperson for the Campanellis. They are too emotionally distraught to even speak to anybody. Mr. Corbin had mentioned that most of these crimes take place at night. That is not entirely true. The major vehicle accidents that take place on the house occur at night. However, they also occur during the day. We haven't yet pulled all the police reports for the accidents that have taken place at that property, much less that intersection. Some go unreported, where they just go through the yard and tear up the landscaping. And Dennis handled that on his own numerous times. I understand not setting a precedent for the city to start buying up properties. But we're not talking about Mrs. Smith who loses 5 mailboxes. We're talking about a house that has already been struck 4 times a property that's had lives taken on it due to the intersection and some of the measures that have been taken by the city that they don't want to go any further with for liability. Where does the liability lay when one of my family dies because the city decided to protect the impaired driver or, you know, the medically impaired driver or the careless driver? I'm going to hold somebody responsible if something's not done. My family will hold somebody responsible. We have to take all this into consideration for the community, not just my in-laws. The community deserves to be protected. That's the precedent you want to set, not a precedent of how do we save money. Care for the citizens. As human beings, not just your constituents and your neighbors, as human beings, you don't want anything on that property. You don't want to park. You don't want to put up a wall. They don't want to live in a castle. They don't want to live in a prison. They just want to live their life outside of barriers and arborvitaes, which are doing absolutely nothing. Nothing should reside on that property. Maybe a water feature. You talked about what would stop it if no house were there. Put a 3-foot water feature where as soon as it hits the water, it's dead. Make it look pretty, make it look nice, but no dwelling should be on that property at all. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I have a question for you. How far back from the guardrail, and please guesstimate this, how far back from the guardrail does the front of the house sit?
I would say 75 feet, maybe 50, 60, 75 feet, somewhere around there.
Okay.
The guardrails, like the engineer said, they stop nothing. In 2017, when that car hit, half of the guardrail was in the backyard. The guardrail is what launched the car in the air to it landing on top of the house. The guardrail is a bumper. That's what it's intended for.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is, any other, Mayor?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. First off, I give my condolences to the family and all that you've dealt with at this property. As I was just listening and thinking about ideas, you know, one of the kind of processes I thought about was there's things that we already do as a city that do have some precedent that maybe we could just kind of think through how could we shepherd the family through the process. So for instance, we do demolish homes right now. Most of the times they're homes that have been condemned or they're homes that are no longer livable. We wouldn't want you to move and let the property go to that sort of state and then demo, but just keep in mind that there is a function for us to demo. The second is there's organizations that help people with home purchase and home ownership. So I'm thinking about if this family wanted to transition, could there be someone to help, you know, an organization to help them navigate finding a new place to locate to? Because no matter what, if the home's being torn down, they're gonna have to find somewhere else to live. So is there a resource that could help them find a new place to locate to, provide some grant incentives for them to help move into a new location? And then, you know, it doesn't even have to necessarily be the city. It could be some entity that acquires the home and then tears it down. So I do think there's a way to get there. I think it's going to take a lot of time and intentional effort to get there. It may not just be, hey, let's sign a check right now, give it to them, buy the house and do it. It probably is going to take a lot of, you know, shepherding through and navigating a lot of different resources. But I do see a path forward for you to find a new place to locate to, get some sort of compensation for the land that you have and get that property torn down.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask a question to Ms. Deary. Are you allowed, as our representative body, to speak with the Campanelli's insurance agency to potentially discuss different options with their insurance company? And I'm thinking out loud, this is an idea. If the house, and please, I'm speculating now, If the house is worth 200,000 and there's 180,000 in damage, and again, this is hypothetical, and because I don't know what that is today. If we were to suggest using those, what the mayor said, to do a tear down where we could take ownership of that property at that point, but it would have to be agreed upon by the homeowner and the city and the insurance company.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole of speculation of different options. Obviously, if the owner's insurance company is at play, they are a necessary seat at the table. Obviously, if the city is going to move forward or potentially move forward to possibly purchase this, that's something that, as the charter says, council makes those calls when it comes to real estate. So we would not move forward until and unless council gave the go-ahead. That being said, there may be some informal conversations if they are warranted. We would need to hear more, obviously, from the property owners if that's something that they're looking at. I know there's been discussion about demo here tonight. I think first and foremost, the question is what it sounds like from the Campanelli's representatives, and I understand that, but I think we would need to talk to either them directly or their lawyer or real estate agent or something. And again, I'm speaking hypothetically because no one said anything official yet as far as what they may be looking for. I certainly appreciate that what they're looking for is some peace and tranquility and the peace of mind of not laying their heads down at this property anymore. And I can only imagine what that must be like. Again, this is why people don't like lawyers, but because I don't have a hard and fast black and white answer to your question, Chair.
It was an unfair question.
But
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All those things are, yes, within the realm of possibility. That being said, myself and my office would have to take the cues, obviously, from what council wishes to do, and at that point, we would go from there. I think right now all options are potentially on the table, including dealing with the insurance company.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Law Director Deary, is there a protocol in place to, like, if we were to go forward with purchasing as to how we would establish value? Do we order appraisal? Do they order?
Through you, I think that it could, I mean, all those things are possible. None of those things are possible. I think if you look at the auditor's site, I think that we could wait for somebody to throw an offer out. At the end of the day, something's value is what somebody's willing to pay for it. Kind of the eBay rule of law. You, sir, know this probably better than most, certainly better than me as a real estate agent. We would obviously want to do what's in the best interest of the city and obviously the Campanellis. Again, it's speaking very, very hypothetically.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Corbin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is great, all the ideas and suggestions here. Madam Law Director, I do have a question. You said that we can't do maybe the structural suggestion to protect the house because of the liability we would have against a impaired or whatever driver. My question is, if this would happen a fifth time with 4 recorded accidents, if somebody in the house were to be injured and heaven forbid killed, what would our liability be then? Because this has been brought up repeatedly. Do we suffer any consequence for not taking what I'll say is final action?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, Mr. Corbin, I believe it was Engineer McKillip who stated that under ODOT protocols and other regulations, yes, as a city, we are not permitted to put up the type of barriers that would cause grave harm to a driver on impact. So, although that may seem counterintuitive, and here we're really balancing safety to someone in their home versus the driver. In many ways, people ask, and I'm not saying this is the same situation, but people say, oh, why do our light poles break away? They break away because it's a safety issue, because something has to, in impact, something has to give way. So if we were to put up a barrier that we knew would not give way and essentially would cause grave harm or kill someone on impact, and we knew that, then that would basically, there would be liability there on part of the city. Now, if you're asking what the liability would be for the city, there's a couple different steps there. Could someone sue the city? Of course. Do people file against cities and subdivisions and governments all the time? Yes. That being said, there is such a thing as governmental immunity, and our insurance company, and we would cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't know from a legal standpoint, I'm not convinced that we would have legal liability. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's not going to weigh on everybody's conscience who's sitting up here and is in this room, including myself. But those are two very different things. So if you're asking me if the city would be legally liable if this happened a fifth time, I'm not convinced that we would be legally liable. But I wouldn't be the judge or the jury hearing that. On the other hand, we're human beings and we have consciences, and we have to deal with that as well. And it's my job to give you the legal advice, and at the end of the day, you all have to do what's best for the city, and you have to be able to sleep at night. And I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Thank you, Law Director. Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, when the insurance company say this is enough, automobiles cost almost as much as houses today. When it is damaged like that, they draw the line and says, we pay you off for what it's worth. They have damaged this house 4 times, and the insurance company hasn't said this is enough. And in saying that, the lady that sits on the corner of Lorraine Boulevard and Warden, where the man went through her house, right now you can see the tarp sitting there. The discussion is, should we just level it? It's an issue. Just thank God she wasn't at home when he went through her house. Is it structural damage? There is so much to look at with this house being brick, you know. So that one's sitting over there on Abbott. She's sitting on the corner of Warden and 57, and they went through her house, and all they got up there is tarp. When does the insurance company say this is enough? We buy you out.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Do we have any more questions or comments? Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not on the committee, but thanks for letting me speak. If it was my house, I don't think that I would want somebody to keep building these barriers in front of my beautiful house. We know that it's a bad issue where it sits, okay? I was too little to know, but I was told that it was a drunk driver, but I lived on 421 East Broad, and a car come down Kipling and ended up in a front porch. And yeah, we were all home, and it was dangerous. It happened one time, not as many times as you. That's repetitious. To have that house knocked down and put a park is not going to work, because what happens now, if you don't have enough barricades to stop, like you said, they happen during the day. Now we've got little ones playing. And then what happens when that car just keeps on going and hits the house that's straight through on the back side of that property? I feel something has to be done. I think that we can get creative with, like what you said, see if there's some grant money, some GoFundMe money, whatever. But I think that we need to get these people in a place that they feel safe again and do something with a piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As the conversation's been happening, I really agree with what my colleague, Councilman Oswald, said. The fourth time is already unprecedented enough. A fifth time would just increase that, the unprecedented nature of the repetitions, as he said, of these crashes. If we're talking about whether we purchase the property or not, I'm talking about getting creative and maybe throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, have we considered the thought of perhaps, because there's already traffic concerns already extant in that area, have we thought about perhaps, and this is an engineer question, the possibility of putting a roundabout there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we actually in the engineering department today, we kicked around that idea. There's not enough room as it is. In order to actually do it correctly, we would have to take more property to put something that would actually accommodate the traffic at the location. I like that idea.
Oh, yes, thank you. Just a follow-up. Do you think that that might be a contractual agreement that the neighbors encircling the area might agree to under these conditions? That being the acquisition of additional property to secure a roundabout? And if they did, do you think that that would be a tenable solution to the problem? More tenable perhaps than more barriers?
Possible, it'd be very expensive. I mean, we're now talking about, you know, a major construction project, which would far exceed the value of the home. Yes, very much so.
Just a quick follow-up, if I could, please. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It's tough with the follow-ups. I just want to make sure I get it in. So do you think that even if we had a roundabout, we might be able to, as it were, we'll say fix two birds with one stone, and that we might increase their safety and also better the traffic flow in that area? Do you think that that's possible as well, Madam Engineer?
I think it would better the traffic flow at that intersection.
Okay, and that itself might have a value. So maybe this can be on our list of creative ideas that we can consider as we continue discussing this item into the next meeting and the next meeting until we find a better solution than more barricades. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. I have a question for the chief. As I understand it, the person that hit the house was doing in excess of 120 miles an hour in a Hellcat. Is that accurate? In excess of 100, and then the car that he fled to was also a Hellcat, is that correct? I'm going to ask another unfair question. Did he have insurance? Okay. It just seems odd that somebody could own two late model $70,000 vehicles, get them off the lot without insurance. Just, again, my mind's thinking about different options for these people. Right? Yes. Okay. Any other comments by anyone before we conclude this? I'm sorry, Mr. Snyder.
I'm good. Well, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, while we're discussing, to Engineer McPhillips, is there any need for like any stormwater retentions in that area, like that would assist with any flooding, anything like that engineering can come up with?
We looked at that also. Unfortunately, that's on the high side of the ridge right there at the area. So we do not have a problem that I'm aware of on the south side. We do on the north side, but unfortunately, that's at a lower elevation than this property would be. So,
all right, thank you.
Yep.
If there's nothing else to discuss at this point, I am going to table this again, and I will refer it for discussion for our 27th meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. It'll give engineering, city council, and our legal department a little more time to brainstorm, and any more information that the Campanellis could provide to the city. And I don't want to ask for too much, potentially regarding the insurance coverage of the drivers. Am I allowed to ask to verify that? Is that legal? No, but they might know if the driver had insurance. They do not have insurance.
For you, Mr. Chair, I think that the driver's a little tied up with other issues right now, legal and otherwise. Is that fair to say, Chief?
Okay,
Have been able to ascertain that.
that would be helpful, Chief, if you could. Okay, so we will reconvene in 2 weeks for additional discussion. And anything else from the committee, Mr. Lippian?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one quick note for the record, because I don't know if they got it on mic to help Colleen. The Campanelli family said they don't know if they have insurance. Just wanted to make sure we got that on the record.
Thank you. Okay, I will move on then at this point to the next item on the agenda. The matter of inactive and delinquent EPU accounts to be certified to the Lorraine County Auditor's Office. This is a standing referral. Public Works Supervisor Connor.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair. The list was provided, that was approved by our resolution board on November 3rd and forwarded on for council. $7,949.67 is the total.
Thank you. Any questions? This is pretty standard procedure. We've done this before. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Oswald?
Sorry, through you. I was just reading through this. Do we get a water bill from High Point in the Park?
We've not received any more payments from them recently. They're going to be probably on next month's list again to be leaned.
Okay.
Because they'll be hitting their delinquency time of 60 days.
Mr. Snyder?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Connor, they're paying through the taxes though, right?
Yes, everything that we've leaned, we have collected on. Their taxes are paid in full.
Okay.
So we did
Interesting.
recover. So that's a
Thank
good thing.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay. We have considered the matter of the inactive delinquent public utility accounts. We have legislation, a resolution, authorizing said accounts to be certified to the Lorraine County Auditor's Office as per the attached. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been properly made and seconded.
Question?
All those in favor, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Connor. Okay, the next item on the agenda, number 3, is the matter of applying for an Ohio Environmental Protection Agency grant. This was referred by Parks Director Reardon. This was passed by Utilities Committee on 11/18. I'm sorry, 11/8. I apologize. Excuse me. I will open it for the floor for discussion. Are there any questions? If not, I will read the committee report, a request to apply for an Ohio Environmental Protection Agency grant, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept said grant for a water fountain filling station to be located at South Park. There are no matching requirements for this grant. Emergency clause is requested due to the deadline. Can I get a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
Question?
Motion's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, the matter of establishing an animal control officer position for the EPD. This was referred by Ward 1 Councilmember Lippian. This is for discussion only. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, as we've noted in a previous meeting, the animal control officer position for the EPD has already been established. It's just not currently filled. I think that we should consider funding it. We've had an increase in non-human animal issues, we'll say, throughout Elyria, but I've definitely noticed it in Ward 1. Just personally, as I've been walking around a lot lately, it's been encountered by dogs without leashes. I've been in people's backyards and seen several ditches dug by skunks. There's a lot of skunk issues out, at least in Ward 1. We've talked about deer previously. We've had a pretty robust conversation about deer in Ward 4 and elsewhere. I know that it's been something we've dealt with at the city before by the use of an animal control officer. I think that we ought to seriously consider doing it in a way that's humane. I think that's very important. That also came up in the deer conversation. And at this point, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think Chief Pelko can speak a little bit to that position, its duties, and perhaps what would be involved in filling it.
Good evening. So we used to have an animal warden a while back, and he, I don't know if the position, if he retired or he got laid off, but when Mr. Lippian brought it to my attention, there is a need for it. We handled, I think, just over 400 calls this year so far in dealing with animals. Some of those calls I have to send police officers to, so I would welcome an animal warden, but I know it's going to cost the city some money in order to get an animal warden.
Thank you, Chief. If I could make a comment and again, throw this out for discussion. I called the county and then dug into the city's history on this, and going back, and Finance Director Pileski might remember this, Miss Charlie Bright, if you remember back in the 70s, was the dog catcher, they called him at that time. And then it evolved into an animal control position with Doug Gelati. And then after that, we contracted, I believe, in the late 80s or early 90s, and it was Jack Salempa from the county that the city actually had a contract with the county to do their animal, to act as an animal warden. So I spoke to the current animal warden with the county, and the annual expense roughly to operate an animal warden with vehicle, everything, is around $130,000 per year. And he had the numbers in front of him. If we could contract and partner potentially with the county, I think I don't know how that would correlate. We've done it before with the county. I don't know the rules and regulations, how that would work with our union situation here in Elyria, if it's legal or binding to do that. But I agree with Mr. Lippian. We have a heck of an animal problem right now in the city, and to do it the best and most economical is what I'm thinking of doing. And I think we ought to look into now, again, Mr. Lippian, because of your position, you may have to be excluded from voting on that if we were to move forward with working for the county. But I support it. Please know that I support, if possible, partnering with the county for them to do that. Chief, do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
I think anything would be better than what we're doing now. I think that would be a great idea if we could contract it out, and then if people call up, we could refer them, or ourselves reach out to the contractor then and have them resolve the issue.
Your hands are so full with so many issues right now. And I thought to myself, to add animal warden to that list, I don't know if that's in your or our best. I think that's something that we should potentially farm out. Yes, Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Chair. If I'm not mistaken, the county warden works what, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? I don't even think they work every day.
They are.
I had a deer laying on 57 for 3 days. I called about it before I got into action through the county. So when do they work?
I can't answer that. I think it's something we need to investigate.
Yes.
Potentially have the commissioners submit a proposal to us for that service. If we could do it maybe on a per animal basis, or in the olden days, years and years ago, don't laugh at me, olden, they would almost circle the city running a route until that was before cell phones and all the cool things we have today. And Charlie Bright was our neighbor on Foster Avenue. That's how I knew that. I don't know if you remember Mr. Bright. I think we ought to look into partnering with the county on this, letting them, if possible, but we would have to have a commitment that we can't wait for 3 days if there's a stray pit bull next to Ted's house or whatever it may be. Is that okay with everyone? I'm sorry, Mr. Sarah.
I'm getting kind of tired now. Through you. If this doesn't work with the county necessarily, maybe we can partner with a neighboring community. I don't know if Lorraine or Ridgeville or anybody has an active animal control, position right now, but it sounds like, if the county's only working 3 days a week, and I don't know if that's true or not, it sounds that's more like a part-time position, and maybe between a couple of communities and a coordinated effort, it would be a full-time. Just a thought.
I agree with you. What I don't want to do is put our officers in a position like North Ridgeville had a few years ago with feral cats, where a family called, and these cats were vicious, as cats can be. And I won't get into the details of it, but that's the last thing I want. I hope you also don't want that.
Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to put my officers in that position.
Yes, Mr. Oswald.
Cats, through you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so evidently the county's not doing a job that they should be. If they've got this, then they should be, because I've had people call me and say, what should I do? And I said, call the county, okay? So evidently that's not getting done. So like Mr. Sarah brought up, maybe we work with some other people. My thought now, I was getting calls with coyotes, okay? So we're getting an abundance of coyotes, and these people are asking me, what should I do? Well, in conversation with Jeff, I forget what his last name is, but he was our ODNR guy, and I was going to give him a call and see what we can do as far as, just like our deer population, we're getting a coyote population. But I think that we need to ramp this up, because if you guys are going, you're not going to want a skunk I mean, or a dog that's vicious, you know, it doesn't just take, it takes somebody that has the knowledge of knowing how to do this job. And if we're going to do it, maybe partner with somebody else. But if we just have our own, we take care of Elyria. If you're going to spend 120 or 150, and then that way our residents can feel more safe, you know, when they have some place to go.
Thank you. Safety Service Director Lundy, could you assist?
Yeah, no, just, my understanding always was that, the dog wardens at the county would come out and assist communities if they had vicious dogs. If that's not going on, I'm trying to figure out why not. When it comes to deer, I understood that that was always like an ODNR issue that had to be taken care of. So, you know, if ODNR is taking time to address things, that's something else. And then as it relates to skunks and all the animals that are running around, my understanding is that normally calls, we would encourage people to call private companies that would go out and trap and things of that nature. So, so once again, dog warden took care of the dog issues, ODNR took care of the deer, and private contractors took care of skunks and all those issues. That was my latest understanding.
The gentleman that I spoke to from, thank you, Safety Service Director Lundy. The gentleman that I spoke to from the county said they are so inundated with dog calls today throughout the county that they've actually partnered with APL, who is going out and doing their, I don't want to say their job, but a lot of the overflow work. So maybe this partnership could assist everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then also, unless something has changed, yeah, I don't think the description of 3 days a week is accurate unless something has changed. I know that the kennel, I believe, was closed on Mondays, maybe.
I think that's correct. I think that's what he told me.
No, they were supposed to be out there assisting, but yeah, we would, I remember them talking about basically being overwhelmed with the calls, and they were seeking the help of APL, and APL would help out because they were good with intervening in the case of, you know, some dogs that folks may perceive as being more threatening. So I just want to make sure we got everything right. The county would pick up the dogs, the ODNR would take care of the deer, and private contractors were taking care of the skunks.
Okay. Mrs. Davis?
Through you once again, Chair. That APL, I've been trying to reach them for 3 months to help out a senior, get some cats out of her house. You call, see, I'm telling you, you have to push this button to do this button, leave a message, they never call you back. I have nothing for them. When I'm trying to help a senior in an emergency, you can't reach them. And I have a problem with that.
With the APL?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay,
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
I think your history was pretty accurate, but I think there was one individual in between Mr. Bright and Mr. Gelati. I don't recall his name, but he was a longtime city employee, and I believe he was dismissed because he shot a dog.
Was it Mr. Theory?
No, matter of fact, there's another one. No, there's another one. So there was a problem with one of our animal control officers because they were armed, if I can remember correctly. He shot and killed a dog, and I believe we eliminated the position. Well, we didn't eliminate the position, but we laid that position off during the recession. But it is a union position.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mayor, did you have a comment? Okay. All right. Any of the coyote calls, please direct to the mayor's office, please.
And the only other thing I can say is I think they spent most of their time on dogs and cats. They weren't basically wild animal control officers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was just thinking about my history in there. I'm getting old and it's adding up. All right, Mr. Lippian, if it's okay with you, I would like to pursue with the county, and I would take that on, more detail on partnering with them for this, to handle this issue, if you would be okay with that. Yes, Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll echo what the chief says, whatever it takes to get the job done. We've got an animal problem, so let's solve it. So let's get this up for discussion and hopefully action very soon. Thank you for taking it seriously with all of us. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, number 5, the matter of amending ordinance 2022-44 to increase the amount to purchase a dual axle plow truck for the street department. Safety Service Director Lundy, if you could speak to this, please.
Yeah, Assistant Director Williams has informed me that apparently when this was first being processed, we were the understanding this dual axle plow truck would be in the amount of $225,000, which was appropriated in the 2022-44 ordinance. Because of we've seen this with other vehicles as well too. I think have come before council, and now we're looking at an amount not to exceed $231,607. The money was appropriated in the 2016 50% income tax fund capital outlay. So yes, there's a revision to in the amount not to exceed.
We would need to do that, I believe, as an emergency. Is that accurate?
That would be helpful.
Just to get it into the budget?
Right, that'd be very helpful.
Okay. So there's no further delay as well to get it done. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Let me read the committee report then. This is to amend ordinance 2022-44, an ordinance authorizing amending the said ordinance to increase the not to exceed amount from $225,000 to $231,607 for the purchase of a dual axle plow truck for the street department. Funds are appropriated. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been moved and properly seconded.
Question?
Question's been called. All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 6 has been tabled. Next item on the agenda is the matter of entering into a professional service agreement with Retzel and Andrus LPA for legal services for 2024. Safety Service Director Lundy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the firm that we have been working with. It provides us with legal guidance, also works with our city legal counsel regarding many of our labor issues. And we work with Susan Anderson on a lot of things, so this is the firm. The amount of the contract is not to exceed $130,000, and this is a general fund expenditure.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? Mr. Sarah, do you have a question? No question. I will read the committee report then at this time. We have considered the matter of a professional services agreement with Retzel and Andrus LPAs for labor-related matters for 2024. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into said agreement not to exceed $130,000. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been moved and properly seconded.
Question?
All in favor, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is number 8. This is for discussion only. the matter of a request to purchase license plate readers to increase the safety of residents. This was referred by Mayor Whitfield. Mayor, please.
Through you, Chairman, if you don't mind, could I address the next three things in one, since they're all discussion and they're all related?
If you would like to address them all at one time, that would be fine. We cannot vote on them all at one time. Is that okay with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. So
Yes, we're all for discussion, so that's fine.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee and to our residents here. You know, these next three referrals that we made are really related to public service, and we thought it was important to make these referrals. We did this intentionally after the election so that it wouldn't be perceived as something that was being done to try to get votes, but this is something we genuinely need as a city, these three matters. So I'll start with, you know, one of the top things we've heard is the challenge we've had with retaining and hiring new officers. And Chief is going to share some remarks as well, but over the past 3 years, we've hired over 30 officers in the city of Elyria, 30 new officers. The challenge is we've also lost over 10 officers to retirement and 10 other officers through other means. So though we've gotten folks in, we've struggled to retain officers. And now as we look at in terms of the funnel to be able to attract folks into the city of Elyria, we recognize that we need to be more competitive in terms of our wages, that our wages are too low to be able to attract and retain our law enforcement officers. You know, for this year, we budgeted to have 100 officers hired. And I think we've reached a reality that we would rather have 85 or so well-paid officers than to keep trying to get 100 officers with a low wage and it's not working. So a part of what we've worked with, I've had conversation with leadership at EPD. They've created a proposal that I'd like for you to explore tonight to look at how we might increase the entry-level pay, which will also increase the pay amongst our force to help us retain our good officers that we have here in the city of Elyria. The next item that we'll get to after that is in regards to the retention of our police chief. And for those who don't know, the chief has put in his time, and tomorrow he could write a letter to say, I'm ready to retire, and he's done his time, and he served our city well. Well, if we want to retain him, I think a part of what we need to do is make sure we're adequately compensating him as well. If you look at our neighboring communities, they're making $20,000 to $30,000 more than our chief. And I want to list off a couple things that the chief has accomplished during this time. So not only has we've done continuous hiring. Right after a lateral transfer, we were doing entry-level candidate entries. He's increased our community engagement with our community, including the Cones with a Cop, Pizza with Police, Coffee with a Cop, Heroes in helping those in need. He's been involved in town halls. He's been a part of this partnership with the Urban League to do violence interruption. We've had a dedicated full-time school resource officer. He's been consistent with discipline issues. He's assisted in us securing our largest grant for our police department. We've instituted our first traffic enforcement unit in 30 years, which I'm sure you've gotten many calls about, both good and bad. We now are having officers, when they're available, walking the beat. We've shifted to 12-hour shifts because that was something we heard from our officers that they wanted. He's instituted body cameras and car dash cameras. He's led with his team this collaboration with the FBI to create a public safety training facility. We've shut down criminal sites in the city. You've seen that happen as well. The decrease in traffic fatalities. So I think he has done more than exceeded our expectations as a city, and I think we need to make sure that we're taking that into account. If we want to keep a leader like this involved, we need to be paying them fairly and adequately, especially comparing to his peers. And then the last piece is around these license plate readers. We've had a number of tragedies in the city where if we had these license plate readers installed, it would help us to solve these crimes a little faster. And so I know Councilman Corbin, who's no longer here, he recommended us doing 2 per ward, and I like the idea of just increasing our license plate readers and our uses of technology We're looking at about $15,000 just for the equipment. There's a lot of installation charges and expenses that go with that as well, but that is something as well we think you should explore for this upcoming 2024 budget. So again, if we're going to address public safety comprehensively, I think we need to make sure we're paying our police officers adequately, making sure we're thinking about the long-term financial health of the city as well. And I think Chief and Captain Grooms have put together a proposal in terms of what that might look like that they'd like to share with you. Thank you, Chairman.
Chief?
That's it, yep. Just on the license plate readers, this is probably going to be the simplest one to start off with. It would cost $15,000 for 2 cameras at an intersection. That would get north and south, just one direction either way. If you wanted a whole intersection, you'd have to get 4 cameras. That would be $30,000. That's if there was no communications at that intersection. If communications is able to get communications, and I don't understand the whole IT part of it, it would be about $12,000 for 2 cameras. That would get like north and southbound. And if you wanted east and west, you'd have to get 2 more cameras, which would be another $12,000 or $15,000. So strongly recommend it.
I have a question on that. Engineering is in the process right now of completing the traffic cameras. Can we parallel license plate readers into that program, is my question.
Yes, and that's the plan that Larry Showalter is working on with those intersections.
Okay.
Yep. So
that's
in the
I talked
works.
to him the other day, and I didn't know if you could piggyback them.
Yep, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the LPRs, license plate readers? Okay. So you guys always ask if there's anything you can do for me, and so I'm asking. I need some help with hiring police officers. We started off when I took office with 80 officers. I'm currently at 79 officers. I've had 13 officers leave for other departments since 2019. 21 officers have retired since 2019. It cost the city approximately $100,000 to get an officer who hasn't been to the police academy to get them road ready. That includes the cost for the police academy, their first year of salary, their uniform, health benefits. And I have these guys walking out the door after 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It costs the city a bunch of money instead of keeping them. So what we proposed, one of our proposals was to increase the base salary to the police officers to about $75,000. That would make us comparable to other departments. This is a spreadsheet that I did up. Just a bunch of variety of different police departments throughout the Northeast Ohio area. And if you can see, the first column is our base pay, our starting salary, and then the second column is the top salary for these departments. So if you look at that, we start our officers out at just under $61,000 a year. We top out at $65,000. We have some benefits as others do for longevity, but if you look at that list, we're on the lower end for almost all of those agencies. So I'm looking at a problem of recruiting officers. This would help me with recruiting, bringing more officers in, but I'm also having trouble retaining officers. We just had a sergeant with 10 years on leave to go to Westlake Police Department. I had a detective leave with 7 years on. He went to the private industry for more money. Anything we can do to help try and recruit and retain our officers, I think, would be a benefit to the city. Not to mention the good job that they do and the workload that they take on.
Chief, can I ask a question real quick? can you submit this, to the clerk so that this study, but I'm also gonna ask Ted if, excuse me, say, Finance Director Pileski, if you could, is there a way that we could, factor in longevity so that it shows accurately in this report?
Got.
Do you have that?
So this first one, this is just a spreadsheet of what we're currently paying in longevity. And this mic. So right now, the city's paying $190,000 to officers for the current longevity, okay? Go to the next one. So this proposal would be for, if we have a lateral come over and they have 5 years of experience, right now they only get we have two classes of pay. We have Class A and Class B. When you start off at Class B unless you have like a year of law enforcement experience, then you go to Class A. With this spreadsheet right here, we would give the officers up to 5 years experience if they have from another police department. And so with that said, I think the amount extra the city would have to pay would be $30,000 for the current police officers that we have right now. Total.
Annual expense.
And their experience is definitely worth it to pay them that 5% longevity. We don't have to do as much training with them. They're experienced. And we've got a couple guys from CMHA, a couple guys from Cleveland who we were able to expedite their training, and they know what they're doing. They're experienced officers. They're just invaluable. I think it's money well spent.
Is there any negative to taking in lateral transfers? And this is just because I'm ignorant to when you take someone in from Maple Heights or somewhere else, is there any negatives that come with that?
The only negatives I could see is maybe if they had issues, but we do a background check on everybody, so I don't think there's any negatives to bringing in a lateral.
Okay.
You're bringing in an experienced officer. Our problem now is we're bringing in laterals from a lot smaller departments where they're not experienced, so we still have to put them through the whole training program, and they wouldn't get that long. Well, they would if they have years experience, but like we just hired two from Newburgh Heights. They only have like a year or two on, so they would only get 1 or 2%. But again, they're not going to the academy. We're not paying that expense for them. And the next one. So this was just a mock-up. This is when we were talking about having 100 officers. If we would hire an extra 15 officers and they would have 5 years experience, we would pay them the 5% longevity. That would add an extra $67,000 to the budget. That's, like I said, if we would hire 15 lateral officers who had 5 years experience. That's kind of a worst case scenario for how much it would cost the city. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, does that include overtime?
It did not include overtime.
So, just for everybody's information, that longevity does attach itself to some of the overtime hours. So,
Mayor?
through you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. We believe that if we increase the wage, the base wage, we don't necessarily need to touch longevity. Am I correct in that assumption? That if we can increase that base wage, longevity kind of is not the big issue anymore. It's just that.
That's correct. If we would increase wages, I think that would help us take care of the longevity part of the issue as well. So with that said, we'll go to my next document. can't take credit for this fine piece of work. Captain Grooms is the one who provided this one for me. But this kind of gives a breakdown. Once the patrolman hit its Class A, they're at around $67,000. The pension contribution's $13,000. Family medical is $20,000. Uniform $5,000. Academy $5,000. Total $110,000 for an officer. In our talks with the mayor and Officer and Auditor Pileski, we talked about instead of budgeting ourselves for 100, we would budget for 90, which would save the city $1.1 million. And then if we raise the base salary to $75,000 from Class A, that's a $7,700 increase. And then we took into account all the raises that the supervisors would get based on that. And then that total would be $945,499. So ultimately, by only budgeting for 90 and given that $75,000 base, we would be $160,000 less than if we had 100 officers at the current salary.
Through you, Chairman.
Please, Mayor.
Okay, so just to put some context to this, so how I tried to articulate this is right now we currently have, let's just say, let's just use for the sake of numbers, we have budgeted for 100 officers, and let's say that costs $100,000, or just for the sake of figures. But we know the wage that we're paying isn't good enough to attract to actually ever get to that 100, and the market has just been hard to secure that 100. So the proposal is, how about we lower the amount of officers we budget for, but we increase the pay so that we can actually get the officers that we want. And not having it equal, though, not paying, because we also have to think about the big picture and the financial sustainability of this. So I'm not saying at the 85 officers are going to get 100 officers pay. There's somewhere in the middle there that we think that we should be trying to make sense of with these numbers. And right now, the police department is being paid out of 5 different funds. We know 2 of those funds will be going away. One of them is the ARPA from the federal government. The other is the ARPA from the state that we have. Both of those funds will be going away. But I believe that through attrition and through, if we continue to invest in economic development, that those, if we we have the strongest cash balance we've had in decades, if we can come up with a plan for the next 3 years that can help build up our police department, that we will be in a good position 3 years from now where we can sustain through attrition, and also we'll have more public safety in the city, and we'll have good jobs and things happening in the city so that we can sustain it. But when we kind of had our negotiating back and forth, and Captain Grooms might be able to speak to some of his insights on this, but we talked about how we might be able to balance, even if we didn't do 90, what if we did 85, which might cut that number to more of a $600,000 increase per year, and can we stomach that over the next 3 years? Can we set aside some ARPA funds and put them into the general fund so that we can do this over the next 3 years? When we built up this cash reserve, when I got in office, I think we had maybe a $6 million cash reserve. We got like a $12 million cash reserve right now. So the question to this body and the question for the city is, what are we building the reserve for? And I can't think of a better use of the reserve than for public safety and what we're dealing with right now. And not to eat away at the whole 12 million, I think we can come up with a reasonable plan that maybe takes a $5 million hit on that reserve for the next 3 years to ensure that we have the public safety we need in our city. So that's what's before you that we want you to ponder on, think about. We understand you didn't plan to make a decision on this tonight, but we think that this is something that we need to make a decision on soon. Thank you.
Councilman Oswald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not on this committee, but I believe that they need to make more money and their base salary pay, but help me out. I thought if you have somebody that's, let's say, 5 years longevity, that's the one thing that holds them, isn't it, to going to another job?
If you're paying an officer 5% longevity, So you're paying him an extra $3,000. He's gonna be making not even 70 grand, where he can go to these other departments and start out making 75 grand. Why would they stay?
Please.
But I'm not saying at least bump their pay up, but still, let's, whatever, raise their salary, their base salary, but still figure out some kind of a longevity that holds them. Because I know in some of the departments that somebody was thinking about leaving until they seen how much time they've added up in longevity and they didn't leave. So that was one point that kept them here. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't increase the salary, but I think if we increase the salary and we do something to maintain a longevity, now you're paying them more, but you've got something that's gonna kind of hold them. And those are the kind of incentives, I think, that you can see what you can do to retain them. I think that's the important thing.
Right, and that, you're hitting the nail right on the head. That's what we need, the people to stay and retain them by doing that. Correct.
Thanks.
Mr. Pileski, so you know, I was going to kick off, I think, with kind of a financial report to segue in, but if you had something direct to this issue. Okay. Chief, did you have anything else to address? Captain Gould?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, are these officers under a union?
Yes.
Why are we talking about this and they have a union?
That's one of the issues I'm about to address.
All right.
Mayor, please.
Yeah, I think all of us have a response to that because we talk about this very often. So I don't know if you want to go with them first, all three, those two, and then I can give my remarks.
Yeah, so I did speak with the union about this and inquired if they were good with opening up the wage part and me having this conversation, and they said that they were, because they're well aware of the crisis that we're in with hiring police officers. So they're aware that I'm up here talking about this, and they gave me permission to talk about this. We would have to open up that contract, and I think that's why we're presented to you guys, because we would have to talk with you guys about doing that, so.
Okay, thank you, Director Deary.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So just for a point of clarification, so yes, I mean, any sort of adjustments would require one or more memorandums of understanding should you go this route, because obviously you're talking about base pay for patrolmen, but there would be wage differentials that would come into play inevitably, because base pay changes, everybody else's pay would likewise change. Has anyone I'm guessing you've been in discussions with Attorney Anderson about some of these proposals?
She's aware we're having the conversations, but just like the 12-hour shifts, that was in the contract was 8-hour shifts. We had to get an MOU with them in order to go to the 12-hour shifts as well, so.
And that's not directly to your point, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, I'm gonna address a couple things real quick, then I'm gonna segue to Director Pileski. As strong as our financial carryover is right now, we are still in 21, 22, and 23 deficit spending. We're spending more than we have coming in. ARPA on a federal and state level really helped us. Knock on wood, between the mayor and city council, we banked a tremendous amount of this money to take us into the next few years. We have to be very strong stewards of that money. Now, when we potentially open up a police contract, are we also potentially then mandated to open up fire, all the other unions that represent the city? We don't know. I don't know as a city council person, I don't know the answer to that. So when we do a long forecasted budget based on what we're asking for the police, do we need to take into to consideration what impact that will have on the fire department. Will they be standing in line for their adjustment at the same time? Will whoever it may be. So I ask you, the same with the police chief pay being adjusted, will Chief Pernesti request that same amount? And we have to, why I wanted this for discussion only, we're going to have to look at this. It's such a unique financial time in our city. It's unbelievable. So I am going to segue into Director Pileski and Farrell right now to let them talk a little bit about finances and what we as a committee are tasked with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So up on the screen now is a summary of the general fund and ARPA for the last couple of years. So, excuse me, everything above the yellow blocks is the general fund. Everything below is the American Rescue Plan Act fund. So in 2022, actual revenues in the general fund were $31,541,941,355. Actual expenditures, $29,498,105. So if you subtract the expenditures from the revenues, you'll see that revenues exceeded the general expenditures in the general fund by 2.4 million.
Can I stop you there? Does everybody understand that we deficit spent by 2.4?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Wait, I said that wrong. I apologize. Go ahead.
That's positive spending. So in green means it's
correct.
We're adding to our cash. You go down below and you've got, these are the ARPA expenditures that would normally come out of the general fund that will have to be moved back in after next year. 2024 is the last year that we can use ARPA for payroll-related items. So we spent $41,553 on Muni Court, $1,985,530 on fire. We're currently paying for 16 firefighters out of ARPA, and $2 million on police, and that was we're currently paying for 25 police officers out of ARPA currently. So when you factor in that $4,117,272 and you subtract that number from the $2,441,250, this is what would have happened if everything was in the general fund. You'd be deficit spending by $1,674,000. What'd you do there, John? Yeah.
Come on, John.
$1,674,022. So that's excess expenditures over revenues. Now, I did a 2023 year-to-date, but you want to go to the final column, which is anticipated. So we're looking at receiving $32,818,844 in revenues in the general fund, $30,068,153 in expenditures, and that's $2,756,991 to the good. So revenues over expenditures. You factor in ARPA that are going to have to come out of the general fund after next year, $125,931 for Muni Court, $1,500,000 for fire, and this is all payroll. $2,882,756 for police, $200,000 for miscellaneous, $250,000 Parks and Rec, for a total of $4,958,687. So you look at the $2,750,000 above and subtract the $4.958 million, and expenditures exceeded revenues by $2,207,996. That's what I'm anticipating for this year.
And that, just one second, Mayor, I'll let you speak next. So we have to take that 2207, reduce that carryover by that amount.
If we didn't have ARPA, that's what we would be doing.
Right, if we did not have ARPA.
So after 2024, starting in 2025, this is what you can expect, that our cash balance will be dropping. We have 12 million in the general fund now, but it could be dropping as much as $2.2 to $3 million a year
Starting,
in 2025.
okay. Mayor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, again, I've lived with these numbers since the day I got in here, and I was told that, you know, because of the pandemic, we were gonna be faced with a 20% hit on our revenues. So I've been very intimately involved in all of these numbers throughout my time. Couple things I wanna point out that I think are important. One is our income tax revenue is increasing. Is it increasing at the pace we need it to, that I'm satisfied with? No. But it is increasing. And I think we need to be mindful of, we need to continue to create a city that companies want to do business in the city of Elyria, because that side of the ledger has to be paid attention to. And I've stressed that with these ARPA funds as well. The second piece is that when we make these comments about if we did not have ARPA, we would X, Y, Z, we cannot use that as a context, because we literally made decisions because we had ARPA. We gave our police a 3% raise, we gave fire a 3%. These are all decisions that we never would have made had we not had ARPA. So this number is reflective of decisions we made because we knew we had ARPA funds. Go ahead, Director.
That's true, but we made those decisions, and then we're gonna have to live with them after ARPA is gone. So, and that's what we're looking at on the screen.
Correct. We have to deal with what is coming when they're gone.
Yes, and through you, Chairman. So what's coming once they're gone is a couple things. One, we have $3 million still that's been unallocated, at least $3 million of ARPA funds that could be put into the general fund that could help us for another, as you can see, that carries us at least another year in terms of expenses or whatever. The other piece is that through attrition, I think if there's good management and stewardship, some of these pieces in terms of the general fund will begin to correct themselves, because we won't have to backfill every position we lose. Especially in the context of what we're talking about with the police department, in terms of if we increase these wages, increase it up to 85 officers, kind of stick with that number, you know, as attrition happens, and if we don't have to go above that number. And again, it's a number that I think we can stomach. The other comment that was made in terms of other departments coming forth requesting raises and other individuals requesting wages. I think one thing that this body is going to have to make some decisions on is some people you just have to say no to. I think if we believe that this is truly a public safety crisis right now with our law enforcement, I don't see people knocking down our doors saying that, you know, we're short on firefighters and, you know, our city's unsafe because we're short on firefighters. That's not what we're hearing. What we're hearing is we're short on police officers and our city is less safe because of it. So that's the crisis we're dealing with at hand. The other crisis we're dealing at hand is we have a chief that could tomorrow, based on the feedback of this conversation, could hand me a letter and say, Mayor, it's been good working with you. I think I heard what I heard clear from council and I'm moving on. That's what we're trying to avoid today. And I do think we need to think about the long term. I wouldn't be suggesting this if I didn't think through and have these discussions with the finance director around what I believe our true reality is. But I do think we have to, you know, the whole idea of if we didn't have ARPA, this is where we would be. There's decisions we made because we had ARPA, which is why you see the picture you have here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Pileski.
Two other items to bring up. So currently, all municipalities in Ohio pay 19.5% toward police and police pensions. So it's 19.5% basically of their gross pay. The Ohio Police and Fire Pension Board has voted to increase the employer contribution from 19.5% to 24%. I haven't seen an effective date. It still has to be passed by the legislature, but I'm sure that it will because there has not been an increase in some time. So that increase in pension costs is going to cost the city an additional $400,000 approximately per year.
And will that grow then at roughly 3% annually on top of that?
It'll grow as often as the wages grow.
Okay.
In addition, Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, that's all other employees that aren't firefighters or policemen, that's the other pension fund. All cities in Ohio currently pay 14% on gross wages. They have voted to increase it to 18%. That's going to cost approximately another $800,000 per year for the city, based on last year's payroll numbers.
So we're looking at $1,200,000 in additional annual expense, compounding at 3% ballpark annually.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Yes. Whenever the wages go up, the pension goes up.
And do you, and I know I'm asking you to look in a crystal ball, do you see this happening effective January of 2023, 2024?
I think it'll be more mid-year as far as police and fire. OPERS, they've just voted, so that's just in the beginning stages, but I would assume that will be in place by 2025. So.
Okay.
So that's a couple other things we'll have to address and discuss as we move forward with the budgeting process.
Do you put that in, I know that you have to prepare a forecasted budget. Because it's not law yet, can you forecast that?
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
And probably we'll have to. Not knowing, of course we're going to pass a temporary budget. The permanent won't be passed until sometime March of next year. So we may have a concrete deadline when it's going to occur. So, but it's going to happen.
Okay. Mayor?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. A couple of things I just wanted to point out. There's been also this commentary around deficit spending. And I think, again, just to make sure we're being, I guess intellectually honest, if that's the comment to make, when we do our budgeting, which predates me, so this is how y'all been doing budgeting for the past 10 years at least. When I look back at the records, you look at what the revenues are going to be, you look at what your cash balance is, and you budget to the $0 amount. So that is a deficit budget that's been happening for at least 10 years prior to me. So this idea of deficit spending, we've been deficit budgeting for a decade. So that's not a new practice around here. I think that's important. The other piece that I wanted to mention is that I'm recommending our chief's base pay. I believe it's at $135 now. We have another classification on our salary ordinance that's E92, where he would have the ability to grow from the 135 or 134 that he's at now. He'd be able to have a range that would be able to go up to 180. So it'd be, we could, through the personal placement committee, through conversations, he would be able to move up, hopefully immediately, to a place closer to the 150, 156 area. But then he'd also have room to grow on the salary ordinance. So that's what my recommendation to you would be, is the E92 on the salary ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of this committee, any comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Not being a member of the committee, but being able to discuss. I just want to zoom out for a second and just remember that this is an urgent need to reinforce our safety abilities in the city. Multiple complaints have come to me about safety in the city, shootings, violence. I really have to zoom out for a moment and remember that the devil is in the details. But as we examine these details, we need to remember that behind these numbers are the lives of citizens that we have a charge and a duty and a responsibility to protect. And the duty and charge to protect them is carried out by our men and women in blue. And we have to dive into these details and get them the resources they need, because gosh darn it, every time a shooting goes on in the city and I hear we're short-staffed on our police force, if we don't do something about it, it weighs on our conscience, and it should. Just wanted to make sure I made that mention.
Thank you. Any other members of, any comments? I'm sorry, yes, Captain.
Mike Grooms, 18 West Avenue. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate, we're not asking, and drive home the point that we're not asking to increase what the city spending is. We're certainly willing to make concessions, that being in the number of, as Mayor Whitfield said, the number of officers that we retain. Whether it's 85 or 90, it's certainly lower than the 100 that we were hopeful to get to. That was based on a 2022 where we hired, I think, 18 officers. We thought we could keep up with that pace, and we just haven't been able to. The pool is drying up significantly, especially with other agencies around the county having big contracts, boosts of, recently, the most recent being North Ridgeville. Unofficially, I heard they're going up 18% in their base salary here in the near future. We're not asking for that much by any means. I think we're being responsible with what we're asking for. When you look at the chief, he says 46 officers we've hired since 2019, and we're down one officer from that time point. I mean, we're at 79 officers. 13 of which of those 46 that we've lost are directly related to wages and going to other communities, other agencies. And I think if we were able to retain those 13 officers, we'd be at 92, which is still not up to that 100, but we'd be spending that money anyhow at that 92,000. I think what we're asking for is some deep consideration on both parts, working together to find where we can come in. I got to believe that when we got the budget approved for 100,000, there was belief that we could sustain those numbers, that output by the city for 3 years. I think we can come in under that number and still sustain that number for the next 3 years, to 2027. That's about all I have, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell, did you have anything to add to the discussion at this point? Okay. Interesting discussion, things to think about. I believe this committee owes it to the police department to have a decision on this sooner rather than later. So I will refer all these for the 27th meeting so that we make a decision on this going forward. We owe that to you. And I hope the committee is in agreement with that. And not that we open it up or vote yes on it. I understand about the union issue. I understand that. But it gives us 2 weeks to get information from Susan Anderson, and I'm going to ask Safety Service Director Lundy to ask her to give us some guidance. The mayor, if you could assist with that, because what we don't want to do is open up a kettle of worms that our city finances can't live with for years to come. That's what we have to avoid. We have to avoid that. And that's when we all took our oaths, that's what we made the commitment to the taxpayers to. Okay? Thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate that. And I think so far I've been much better than Mr. Stewart, so. Okay. The last item on the agenda is the matter of amendments to the 2023 permanent appropriations. Yes, number 11 we moved. We're moving that, so it's the last item on the agenda. Finance Director Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have any tonight. We'll be bringing several over the next couple of meetings as the last 3 payrolls get posted. So. Okay, thank you. All right, if this committee has no more questions or concerns, I would accept a motion. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make one quick comment about one of the agenda items. So my closing comment on the discussion item for an animal control officer shouldn't be construed as giving any permissions whatsoever, just that I'd be interested in seeing what you bring to council for a vote, because I'm not a voting member of the Finance Committee. If you create a solution to the issue of non-human animals that does not involve an animal control officer, that would then become your referral and not mine.
Okay, I'm sorry. You are correct. Okay. I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Do you actually like doing this for a living?